Bookish escapism and joy? Question mark. No. I'm here to publicly say that I am pretty ashamed of the majority of the white booktube and bookstagram community for not making a clear declaration about where they stand with the ongoing situation in Palestine. I started selling books when I was about 20, it was 2005, and when you walked into a bookshop in 2005, you were greeted with the same kinds of authors every year. They were white, male, middle-aged, either writing thrillers or literary things about Dickens. The same people were up for the prizes every single year. It was very much kind of a boys' establishment. And now in 2023, it's hard maybe to remember, if you're as old as me, what that was like compared to now, because now there is diversity and inclusivity. Still not to the levels they need to be, but it's getting better all the time. As somebody who consumes books and then makes content out of it online, which is what many other people do, I am almost piggybacking off of that inclusivity. I don't have to try very hard at all to read books that are about all different kinds of races, all different kinds of religious experience, sexualities. I can read pretty widely, even just following the major book prizes. And the byproduct of that is that I look inclusive. It's a positive reflection of me to read those kind of things. And it's the same for a lot of other content creators out there. In fact, in 2020, when George Floyd was murdered, one of the things that was called out the most was the way that white booktubers and white YouTubers were not reading as diversely as they should, and were not championing books written by people of colour, books about difficult topics. So I think there had already been a shift towards inclusivity before that, but that's when it ramped up. Now, it didn't ramp up because white people were saying, we want to read more inclusively. As I said, it ramped up because people of colour said, you need to be doing that. And publishers didn't change their mind because YouTubers, TikTokers, Instagrammers said, well, we're just not going to make anything until you change the literary environment. We're just not going to do anything. Publishers changed because of activists in the wider political world demanding that there was change. So activists were out there on the streets protesting. They were getting sacked from their jobs. They were getting evicted from their homes. They were having their reputations tarnished. They were being arrested, facing police brutality, all in the name of equality. We watched it happen. But how many of us actually took part? How many of us risked any of those things personally? I doubt very many. And it's certainly not true that by reading the benefits of that activism, so the diverse and inclusive fiction and non-fiction that we can access in 2023, that reading it and putting it out there is not indicative of how much of an effort we put into getting it there in the first place. It's just a complete accident. And any benefit that we gain from it that makes us look more inclusive, that makes us look woke, is kind of gross, really, because we didn't necessarily get that stuff there in the first place. We can hardly avoid it now because, thank God, prizes, literary prizes, are now, thankfully, much more reflective of the kind of diverse authorship out there. So it's a win-win situation. We didn't necessarily, I'm not saying nobody did, but we didn't necessarily, as a white book-loving community, have to do anything. We got all of these great books. All we have to do is read them and review them, and we look great. So what I'm finding very difficult to line up is the political nature of a lot, and particularly the post-colonial nature of a lot of the books that are out there right now. The fact that you can't avoid those things when you're reading them. Like, you can't read Andrea Levy's Small Island and be politically neutral in your review. You can't say, well, I see it from both sides. You know, I feel like the white people also suffered because they had a bit of a shock when everyone from the Caribbean turned up. You can't say that. You wouldn't say that. Nobody would review that book in that way. You also wouldn't be stopping yourself while you're reviewing that book and saying, of course, I can't personally say what my opinion is on the subject. That's not what's happening when I'm seeing these Instagram reviews or YouTube reviews. People get upset. People are getting emotional. People are saying they feel shame or, you know, just a great sense of sorrow. And when I say people, I'm talking about, as I say, most of this is aimed at white creators. People invest in that, in the political stance, in the post-colonial stance, when they read it in things like America Is Not the Heart, or Milkman, or Small Island, or Camilla Shamsi's book. There's so many books out there that are written through a post-colonial lens, and written certainly with political interests as a major part of the plot. To be able to discuss it, to be able to discuss politics on your channel when you're in the comforting zones of someone else's authorship, is a way of removing yourself again from the political implications. So you didn't do anything to get these books published in the first place. You can read them and sound very inclusive and as though your heart is in whatever that struggle is that's being depicted. But because you can also step away from the framework of the book, you haven't actually said anything overtly political in your own words. You've just parroted back what the book says and shown that it's affected you. That, to me, is a very shallow way of making any kind of commentary on either the books or the political landscape. Because what are we going to do now with this situation in Palestine? Are we going to wait for someone to write a book on it and then we can talk about it with tears in our eyes in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time? We don't seem to want to commit to any kind of stance on it now, but we're okay talking about it within the confines of a book in whatever future tense there is. And we'll look great when we're doing it, because we'll be upset and we'll be giving our heartfelt thoughts on it, but only within the confines of that book. I find it extremely upsetting that thousands of innocent people are dying every single day, and nobody who is not already invested in it is making any kind of online comment. I'm watching a lot of Muslim content creators and people of colour and a lot of the queer community. I'm watching a lot of those people who run accounts that are about books. They're meant to be about the joy of reading, but I'm watching them open up a space within those accounts to say that they disagree with what is going on in Gaza and the West Bank. And I think the reason why, if there's any part of you that thinks, well, what difference does a post make? Our governments are saying that we're okay with it. You know, that if they're the mouthpiece for what we feel politically because we voted them in, the UK, America and Canada have all said that they support Israel. Doesn't that make you feel like you want to say, actually, no, I don't support the bombing of innocent civilians, no matter who's supposedly hiding behind them? That, to me, is something we can all do, because you can sit in your house and you can turn to the person next to you and say, I don't agree with it, but no one's going to know that. And yes, some of you might be doing private activism. You might be going to marches, signing petitions, writing to MPs, great. But if you're doing that, I don't understand why you also wouldn't put it online. I don't like this idea that as content creators, we are somehow going to cleanse our spaces of anything contemporary, of anything negative, that it will only be a place of joy. Because I feel like that's a line that's rolled out a lot. I want this to be a safe space. Well, actually, no, because when the pandemic occurred, everybody spoke about it. We were all upset about it, but everybody mentioned it at least once, twice, a dozen times. Yes, we still made videos about joyful things alongside, and that's okay. I am still living my normal life whilst being upset about this issue. I'm still being a mother, I'm still going to work, I'm still walking my dogs. And then when I have a moment where I feel I can do something or say something, I do it and say it. And I'm not worried about who's going to unfollow me, and plenty of people have. I am unable to occupy an online space surrounded by content about what is happening in real time, a genocide occurring right in front of me. I am able to look at my phone and see that and not post about how I disagree with it and I'm appalled by it. I can't see that content and then only produce somehow completely parallel universe. I don't live in a world where anything bad is happening content. I don't know why. I can understand needing to step away. I can understand turning off the internet. I've been listening to David Copperfield. That has got nothing to do with anything that's going on right now. It is a completely safe space for me mentally. I am watching Friends like I always do because it's another safe space for me mentally. I can understand that, but I am saying that as a consumer of Instagram pages and YouTubers, I do not want to see you say nothing. It doesn't make me feel better. I'm not going on your channel going, thank God they're not talking about Palestine. I'm going on your channel thinking, why haven't you said anything yet? Where do your politics align? Where is your humanitarian duty, especially when you have a bigger following? Why is it that you don't want to post? What are you afraid to lose? And if it's that you don't feel you understand enough about the topic, and this is to anybody watching, you're a reader and you've had a month. If you haven't picked up something, I strongly urge you to do so. It took me a matter of days to get the bare bones of what is obviously a vast subject. Even if in those early days you weren't sure what to say, surely after 4 weeks and over 10,000 deaths of completely innocent people, it is extremely obvious what you should say. I don't know how to and I don't think it's my place to try and convince anybody to care. That is just something that you'll either will do or you won't. But it is my place to say that I will be unfollowing channels. I will stop supporting organisations. I will not be putting my money or my viewership into anyone that cannot say the words ceasefire now. The most neutral statement that you could possibly say about this whole thing is ceasefire now. And if you don't say it, I am not interested in anything else you have to say, especially if you are a booktuber or a bookstagrammer who is actively piggybacking off of other people's activism in previous years, looking diverse and inclusive, with your finger on the pulse. You're woke, everything about you is inclusive. I can't support you if in this moment of humanitarian crisis you can't ask the bombs to stop. I mean, that's what I'm here to say, and I kind of encourage you all to say it. I don't necessarily say that you should reach out to individual people and demand to know where they stand on things, but maybe quietly unfollow people and they can figure out for themselves. Tons of people have unfollowed me since I've started talking about pro-Palestine stuff. So they weren't afraid to tell me that they didn't agree. People unfollow me when I post about pro-trans stuff as well. Anytime I post about something political, I get people unfollowing me. And you might say, well, that's not, your career doesn't rely on this. I would do it whatever. Like, I can't separate my own morality from what I create online, because so much of what we all create online is personality, and we put our own lives in it all the time. So I don't know why you wouldn't do it in this instance. Anyway, I'm going on. I hope you're all okay, and if you haven't read anything about this situation yet, there's tons of lists online, and you've had a month. I think it's time to pick something up.